everyone, it's Terrence Branley with the Grow IT podcast. And today I'm lucky to have Oliver Kane, who is the Chief Operating Officer at SmartCo Consulting. And if you're interested in digital transformation, large-scale digital transformation for your organization, then you're going to want to listen to our conversation today. Oliver's a great guy, and I can't wait to get into this conversation. Welcome, Oliver, and thanks for joining me from across the pond over there in the UK.
Thanks so much, Terrence. Great to be here.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your background. Tell me about SmartCo. Tell me a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So I come from a kind of sort of basically large-scale transformation program delivery background. So spent the last 20 years of my life kind of fell into technology a little bit, cut my teeth on the NHS back in the early 2000s, and then kind of moved into the private sector and spent my life really helping companies and organizations get the most out of technology. And as we all know, the last 20, 25 years has been a huge technological sort of growth globally, and to really kind of leverage that stuff is where I've kind of found myself. So sort of more recently, really focused in on ERPs. So spent a lot of time with various clients over the last probably 10 to 12 years, specifically looking at kind of how their applications help them, operationally, right? So finance, operations, procurement, supply chain, all of those kind of things that people kind of consider in the past were kind of more back office applications, really at the forefront of now of kind of like having an efficient and productive business. So recently joined SmartCo a year and a half ago. So I head up the applications practice within SmartCo. And what that means is that everything that we do with our clients generally has a kind of application element to it. So it's just enhancing that and making sure that we've got a real kind of delivery mechanism and that we've got a way of supporting our clients in sort of doing stuff with their applications, whether that be growing them, whether it be upgrading them, whether it be sort of swapping them out or assessing the health of them. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
So when you say applications, is it typically you'll come in with a prospect or client and they'll have a specific need or a specific problem that they're trying to fix and looking to you to develop an application that may be like linking some cross-functional things across organizations? Like I said, if you're working in ERP, enterprise resource and planning, right?
Yeah.
Pieces out, right. That they're maybe looking for something to either help within their own silo of their organization, whether it's operations or manufacturing, or something that's cross-functional.
Like kind of both. Yeah. So we tend to do a variety of kind of engagements. We at the kind of lower end of the scale, we have a kind of an assessment capability. So organizations will come to us and ask for a review of their application landscape, right, and their business architecture and their technical architecture. So what applications do we have? Are we using them properly? Are they efficient? Do they serve purpose? Do people like using them? Are they using them? We'll do an assessment and provide a kind of recommendations and findings report with actionable insight of things they can go and do to actually sort of make them more efficient, make them more productive, right through to we have an ERP to implement. We don't know where to start. We need to go to market. We need to find an ERP, and we can take them through the kind of spec and select process, which is about going out to market, defining requirements, and then through implementation all the way through to transition into live. And then more recently, we've kind of focused a little bit on the sort of post-transformation. So once businesses or our clients have deployed these big applications, whether they be ERPs or Salesforce or ServiceNow or worked at any of the kind of big global application vendors, a lot of organizations are looking at how they optimize them, right? So how do they get like more value out of them, but more bang for their buck? How that might be kind of a licensing thing. It might be an optimization of process, but it also might be as simple as you say, we're not connecting these two bits of applications together, and actually we need to put some integrations in between them to stop the kind of manual keying. So we kind of operate across the piece, really.
What are some of so let's talk about, because again, we talk about our own prospects and clients. What are those problems that you're trying to solve? I mean, we just talked about it kind of from a 30,000 foot view, but maybe you can kind of give us a few examples of how you're coming into those conversations, whether it be, a problem they're solving or some type of desired outcome that they're trying to get to. And again, I know you just mentioned things in terms of like an optimization, but like maybe talk, because there's always the specific problem, right? Like that's kind of like the boardroom, description of it, but maybe talk about that specific pain, right? Or some of them that have led to those conversations.
Yeah, I think we tend to see it in kind of two areas: cost and risk. So if I take kind of risk to start with, a lot of organizations, from what we see, operate at quite significant risk because their technology is not where it needs to be. And I'm not kind of talking about cyber risk, although SmartCo have a whole cyber practice as well, which I'll plug on another podcast. But it's more about the risk of not doing things properly. This is a compliance issue because data isn't being stored correctly, or data isn't being transferred between solutions properly, or data is being extracted, transformed, and then keyed into another system because the architecture or the infrastructure is not correct. So there's a kind of risk around that. Quite often we see also where clients are on old versions of applications, and the kind of jump to say, I'll just like nominally say they're on version 6 of something, and they need to get to the latest version. It might be 3 or 4 jumps away, right? The latest version might be like 10, and it's on the cloud, and they're on-prem, and they've got infrastructure challenges. And it's just like there's so much risk, inherent risk, that's sort of tied up in that legacy application because it's coming out of support. The people that put it in have retired or are no longer with us, and actually they need to make that jump to a cloud-based application or the latest version of something, and they just don't know how to do it. They don't know how to start. So SmartCo really is really good at that, kind of understanding current landscape, mapping the kind of future to be state, and then helping organizations get there. But there's other risk around legislation, tax legislation, rules around HR and payroll solutions that quite are often quite high up a kind of risk agenda in a boardroom, as you say. And then the other one is around data and data integrity, right? So everything is related to data, and more I see, the more clients I speak to really struggle to get meaningful data analytics and data insights out of their systems because A, they don't have the capability, B, they haven't kept up with technology, C, sometimes the data is in such a woeful state because it doesn't have the kind of the governance and control around data integrity, and so again, the way I see it is sort of data now, people call it the new gold, and the reality is to get sort of meaningful data out of solutions is quite challenging, right? We see it on our own, with our own emails and with our own personal data. It's quite hard to kind of step out and go, right, I need to see all of this stuff. So they're probably the two kind of things that we're seeing more and more of, and then obviously AI, the kind of invention of AI and how that's affecting applications and what it can do, and the understanding of the capabilities that are ever changing is also something that's really interesting to us, and a kind of, we're hearing more and more demand from clients about how do we use that properly. So yeah.
We're going to get into the AI question. I don't want to jump the gun here with you've given me a good lead in at some point, but maybe, one of the things, people love success stories, right? And success takes a form, a number of different ways. Sometimes you can help, clients overcome a challenge in their organization. Sometimes you can help them get to, a point to where they've been frustrated and haven't been able to get to on their own. Do you have any examples, maybe recent or otherwise, on some success stories from some of your clients that you can share with us? Maybe the challenges they faced, how you guys helped them overcome them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep on the same thing. There are lots, and that's not kind of like blowing smoke, but genuinely, SmartCo is really good. We're really good at what we do, and we're kind of very proud of our legacy and the fact that we don't invest heavily in sort of business development or sort of front end sales, because 99% of our work comes through recommendations, right? So we have to be good at what we do, because that's where we get a lot of our pipeline. But yeah, recent examples. There's many. Recently, I've just completed a piece of work using a long-term consultant that I've worked with for years, and the business, it's a £500 million business, so I don't know, $600 million revenue business, operating globally. They have a central sort of parent company, and then about 25 opcos, right? So again, a model we see a lot, and we again, this is quite a common thing in that structure, where a very acquisitive business will will buy a business and buy all the IP and everything associated with that business, and then have to integrate them into the kind of parent way of working, and the process and the technology and the people side, and of course the data, right? So we were asked to go in, do an initial piece of consulting work that looked at their Dynamics 365 instance. They had an instance of SAP, and they had an instance of Oracle. We couldn't kind of work out why they had 3 ERPs, but then they had like a multitude of other applications all connected into these things, but they didn't have a application roadmap. They didn't have a understanding from an architectural perspective about where things were and how they were connected. So we did a really sort of in-depth mapping of their architectural estate. We also sort of overlaid the high-level business processes, so anything from kind of the CRM front end of the business or back end of the business, right through to delivery and cash in the bank. So that whole piece was kind of mapped out, overlaid on top of the technical architecture, and then we started looking at the bottlenecks, right, and the pain points. So we held a series of interviews, we had workshops, we did some real hands-on sort of work with hands-on keyboards with the people that actually do the jobs, right? I mean, that's the other thing, is that this stuff is it can be quite ethereal. It can be quite blue sky. We'll go and scratch each other's backs and sit in a room for 10 hours. But actually, to get to the kind of crux of business problems, you've got to sit with the people that are going through it.
You have to get your hands dirty.
You've got to get your hands dirty. And we were just finding loads of demotivated staff, loads of frustrations, lots of risk and data integrity challenges, as I aforementioned, loads of manual keying, no single version of the truth. I mean, you know, lots of inefficiencies, lots of productivity challenges. So for us, it's not difficult, because we've got the expertise to kind of go, well, look, very clearly, this is what you should be doing. So you actually need, first of all, to have some architectural principles around what you're doing and how you buy and connect applications. You also need to have a very clear roadmap of and strategy of what you want to try and achieve and how you're going to try and achieve it. Do you want to go best in breed? Do you want to have a single central ERP that does everything? And then how do you go about it, right? So that's always the challenge. And I also think it's quite scary for businesses, right? Especially of that size and nature, for somebody to turn up and just go, right, everything's wrong. It's not wrong. It's just not optimal. So how do we optimize, and how do we get you from A to B in the kind of smoothest, cheapest, most cost efficient and professional way? And that's kind of, again, I think where we excel a lot is that we're quite human. We have a kind of human element to all of that, and we understand that turning up to a CFO or a CIO and telling them all that's quite challenging. But then to say, well, that's going to cost you 20 million quid to fix it all is equally challenging. So, or more challenging. So we kind of bite it. We put it into bite-sized chunks. We have a kind of short, medium, and long term, and then the kind of quick win section. So we deliver value as we go. So it's not right. Invest for a year, and then at the end of the year you'll get X, Y, and Z. It's like invest in 6 months, and within week 1 you'll get some benefit, and then within week 2 you'll see more benefit. And then that's a much more palatable message, right? That means that, like, sign off of that sort of stuff at board level just is a lot easier, and it's a lot more sensible. So that's probably an example, just the top of my head. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's a good. I mean, like I'll jump on that one because that to me is what's so important. We try to do the same in terms of, providing as much value as possible, right, and de-risking, right, for our clients, and that's kind of what you're talking about, right?
Mm.
You're not going in getting them to kind of commit to jumping in the deep end with you, on a 20 pound or $20 million deal without going and saying, hey, let's just take some small bites of the elephant first, right? And then we'll kind of prove the value proposition and then get you more comfortable with both what we can deliver and our ability to work together and help you solve those problems. And then we'll kind of take the next step. And so, I think that's critical. And in terms of your growth, and it wouldn't be the Grow IT podcast if we didn't talk about it. And you mentioned, that 90% of your deal flow comes from recommendations, right? Referrals, right? Which is, it's very typical. We hear that. That's, obviously what we hear from our, prospects and clients. And, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because, it says you're doing great things, right? When you're getting 90% of your, future business from people referring business to you, that speaks a lot very highly, but it becomes that challenge, right? When you go, okay, how do we scale our firm beyond that? And I guess I'd ask you that, again, what are your challenges in terms of growth as it relates to that?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that we're really focusing on at the moment. We've got some sort of ambitious targets and that we're all sort of trying to hit. I think a lot of it comes down to, well, there's a few things, right? There's macroeconomic challenges. In the UK has been quite static, as you probably know, from a growth perspective for the last number of years. I think there's a challenge there because firms, generally have been holding the cash a little bit more. I think also we've just gone through a round of elections in the UK. We have a new government in place, so that seems to be unlocking already. We've seen the last couple of weeks, we've seen a little bit more traction. We've seen some sort of prospects coming in. So I think that's one side of it. I think that the challenge always is finding the new company, right? The new big organization. We work with a significant number of kind of FTSE 100 businesses, right, in the UK, and have done for many years, and it's always been very successful. It's how do we find the next one or two or three? So we've recently engaged some market access people resources. So we're sort of focusing specifically and trying to hone in on what we're really good at, right? Which is program and project delivery, which is applications, and some other sort of practice areas such as cyber and cost optimization, just two of the others. So I think that helps, right? Because when you're really broad and you do everything, which SmartCo hasn't historically done, but we have done a lot of things. That's always harder to grow. You've got to, in my view anyway, you've got to kind of really channel down, understand your target market, understand your target offering or your actual offering, and then go out to market with a really credible GTM, like really credible go-to-market strategy and approach. Use partners, right, like yourself potentially. Use tooling, use AI. Use whatever you need to use to really get into those bigger organisations. And then we always say it. Once we're in, we don't leave, and that's not because we have a land and expand culture, but just because we're really good at what we do. So it's like, very. I don't think it certainly hasn't happened in my tenure where a client has left us for any reason. So that's always a good thing to go out to market with, right?
Well, you nailed it. I mean, that's, what you just said, I've probably articulated to a number of prospects and our clients, who are very similar to you guys. And so that's exactly right. Right. And you kind of mentioned the AI. I'll use that as our segue here. You used to ask the question of, hey, what do you see coming down the pipe in terms of, technology and new things that are going to affect the industry. And it's a waste of time now. Now it's just like, let's just get right to AI and just have an understanding of that. And earlier in our conversation, you kind of talked about the data component, and it's like, you can't have an AI conversation without talking about, the data aspect. And I guess I would ask you is what do you, I'm going to kind of throw this, kind of 30,000 foot view, but you can take everyone is like, what do you see as the most important thing that organizations should be doing right first before they start delving into this, AI, waters, and where do you think things are going? And again, no one has a crystal ball here, but like, I'd love asking that question of folks.
Yeah, the second half is a difficult one to answer, but let's start with
the first one. That was an easier one.
That's one I can probably have a good go at, although I'm not a kind of an AI expert by any means. One of our clients asked this exact question, right? And a big client, and we kind of went through the process of kind of understanding their pain points and what they're trying to achieve and what the outcome is and why, right? Why AI? What do you want it to do? And often they can't answer that, right? So it's actually just about sort of stripping it back and going, well, AI works on data sets, right? We know that AI works on data sets, and algorithms associated with those data sets. So the first thing for me would be to say that there is no point in going down an AI strategy without having it very heavily linked to a data strategy and an understanding that your data set will inform AI algorithms and all of that kind of clever stuff. So quite often, as I said, we see organizations where data is disparate, it's uncontrolled, it's ungoverned, it's quite often in a very poor state. So absolutely, you're going to go down any transformation nowadays in the technology space, whether it be AI or an ERP or something else, you have to make sure your data is in a good state. So that means having structure, that means having control, that means going through a cleansing type program of works to basically make sure that where your data is, it's clean, that the data that's coming into whatever repository you've got is going through the right governance checks and it's being put in the right way. And then the AI side of it, I think, just kind of plugs and plays, right? But again, I'm not a technologist to that degree, but for me, it's very obvious that if you take ChatGPT, it's using a data set, which is basically everything on the internet at a certain point in time. And it has the intelligence to interpret things. But if you're using it for advanced analytics on a procurement solution or a supply chain solution, then you need it to be really looking at, a clean set of data. And for me, going to your second point, maybe segueing to your second point, where do I think it is today? Well, I think today it can make a significant impact. If I just take one area, I think, which kind of focuses on the ERP application space, I think it makes a significant impact in kind of predictive analytics. So by using those kind of AI algorithms and all of that clever stuff it does, ERP systems can use that to look at and analyze all of the historical data that sits in its core to really forecast future trends, right? So if you look at like demand fluctuations or you look at inventory requirements, a manufacturing client might use that to predict machinery, like maintenance needs. So that kind of predictive maintenance to another level is where AI, I think, can really sort of start getting into the business sort of process advancements. You can reduce downtime, you can reduce your maintenance costs, you can have things that don't break down because you've already predicted that it's going to do it. Now that's been coming, especially into asset management for the last few years. I did some work at Gatwick Airport a few years ago, and predictive analytics was kind of being used, but not with that kind of really intelligent forecasting modeling. So I think that's kind of where it's at now. Where can it go? I mean, who knows? I genuinely don't know. I was listening to something yesterday, another podcast that isn't yours, and it was saying that ChatGPT 3 had an IQ score of 100. I don't know how true this is, right? But had an IQ score of 150, and Einstein had an IQ score of 170 or something like that. ChatGPT 4, the new one, is 1,000 times that in 4 months, right? So now, like, you're talking Einstein on 1,000 times. Who knows what ChatGPT 5 is going to be like? And this guy was saying, it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's not even, we haven't even explored it. So look, I think for now it's great. I'm enjoying using it sometimes. I think it's definitely in our business. It's definitely transforming some of the stuff we do. It's making some of the repetitive tasks a lot easier. It's reducing the some of the time that we spend in kind of admin world. But are we really using the capabilities to its fullest extent? No. Is anyone? I'm sure they are, but the businesses we see at the moment still kind of scratching their head a little bit. We're actually implementing AI into, or Copilot into, one of the biggest organisations in the UK. So we're leading that program at the moment. So if you wanted to have a podcast with
I do actually. That's what I was going to just say. I mean, I can tell you that, obviously I talk with a lot of leaders, founders, executives from IT firms, and everyone is kind of like in the same boat where they're kind of like, hey, we're waiting and trying to figure out, right. And trying to look at some of their processes that are clearly defined, that have been long in operation, that they have good data to start with, to kind of use a siloed process to try and almost do like a proof of concept. But, again, everyone's kind of in that wait and see type of stage. And I would be curious to have that conversation when it's finished, because I think people are waiting for those type of stories, right? Or examples to hear how how firms are implementing it, because I just feel like everyone, much like you just said, right? To go that jump from ChatGPT 3 to ChatGPT 4 was a 1,000x improvement. It's like people are kind of like, okay, what do we do? Should we experiment with it? Should we wait and see? And I get more of like the wait and see of anything, and
But you don't want to be behind the curve either.
That's the downside of it, right? Because if you don't, and again, I want to ask you this: if you're, obviously, if we're sitting here talking to, other businesses, what would you encourage them to do, right? Is it, is it to do what I just kind of mentioned in terms of taking a process that has a good history of data, that has low variation, to try and utilize that for a proof of concept? Is it to try and experiment with another side of the business? I mean, maybe, give me at least your opinion on that.
I think that where there are, it's a bit like RPA, right? So we've seen like robotic process automation, specifically in like sort of finance areas, where you can, and this was 5 years ago, you could point, a bot at a spreadsheet or something and say, do this, and you just leave it overnight, right? And it did the work of, it did a month's work in a night, right? So we're 5 years on or from that, but I think the principles are the same. I think, in my view anyway, and it is just purely my view, I think businesses should be embracing it where they can, but also keeping a kind of lid on the kind of the crazy stuff, the stuff that goes beyond using some Copilot and some chatbots and all the rest of it. But again, that's just my view. We're seeing different things from different organisations, and as I say, we work with some of the biggest organisations in the UK. Some are really like at the forefront of it, and some are just saying, we'll sit behind the curve. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it depends on many factors, investment costs, staffing, appetite, the CIO, right? The CIO often has a kind of view on these things. They might be a very innovative CIO that wants to kind of constantly innovate and increase productivity and efficiency, and they might be a CIO that just wants to keep the lights on and is seeing out their retirement, and it's like I'll leave that to someone else. So yeah, I think it's horses for courses, but certainly in my personal life, I'm embracing it. Yeah, I enjoy using it. I think it blows my mind all the time, and I think it's quite fun. But I
agree. I'll give you a quick story. So yesterday, my son is at university, and he's a business major, but he's taking a class in music. It's part of his general education. He's not very thrilled about it, and he had this project that's due tonight. And I walked him through how to use ChatGPT 4 yesterday, not to have it done for him, but just to kind of help. Like I like to say, ChatGPT will get you 80% of the way there. and you've got to, you've got to ask it the right questions. You have to tell it who you are to kind of write in a style that's similar to you. You still have to go through and edit and those things, but it's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And to hear my 19-year-old after walking through the process, we did a Google Meet like this and just walked him through, and to hear him at the end go, wow, this is like mind blowing. And I said, yeah, it is. And on top of that, you had to learn that from your 53-year-old dad. So you better get with the times,
Yeah, it is crazy. And we use it in our personal life, right? For all sorts of things, like random things that you would think, well, that's going to be a pain. But one thing that I've sort of learned through my little, journey with ChatGPT is the kind of Ryzen framework. I'm sure you know of it, but
no.
So Ryzen, or RISEN, and I'm not plugging it because I don't even know who it was written by, but it's helped me. So you basically, it uses you use the RISEN to create effective prompts. So R is role. So I am a podcaster. Instructions, or I am a podcaster who's had 20 years experience. Instructions, write me a series of questions for Oliver Kane. Then the steps, the S is the steps, so do it in this way. Then what's the end goal? So that's the E. And then the last one is narrowing. So you kind of really narrow it down. And that seems to yield really good results. So anyway, we've gone off topic.
We have, but it's a good one to go off topic, especially because it's top of mind and top of interest with everybody. So why don't we do this as we look to kind of wrap things up? Tell us a little bit about like what the process looks for, a new client that comes on with SmartCo. I know earlier we kind of touched on, kind of some value forward steps that you take, but maybe kind of give us an overview of what that path typically looks like. And I know there's no typical, so maybe just kind of give us a general.
Yeah. As you say, there's no typical, because we'll do anything. We'll do sort of an advisor. We'll do an advisory piece, or we'll do a full blown implementation, or we'll do a cyber assessment, or we'll do a cost optimization, risk and reward type model where we look at licensing and help them with that. So, or cloud migration, or technical debt remediation, whatever it might be. So there is no typical, but I think principally, and that probably sounds a little bit naff, but principally humans are at the center of everything that we do. So we have a really strong, really difficult sort of vetting process of people that we take into SmartCo, and generally we only sort of take people that we know, right, or somebody knows of somebody, and that gives us really, really genuinely brilliant people who are super intelligent, but also sort of super human, right? They're just good human beings. So typically we'd start with a coffee or a meeting with a CFO or a CIO, or generally that sort of level, CTOs, CDOs, CDIOs. In the healthcare side, we have CNIOs, which are Chief Nursing Information Officers as well. And so we tend to sort of start at that level, purely because they're the decision makers ultimately, and they generally have a want, right, or a need. So they might need help writing a business case, or they might need help implementing a tool, or they might need help rescuing a program that's gone red. So we generally start with that, and then we will sit and listen and ask. And quite often now, we'll run a workshop, or just to kind of dig into things a bit more. I don't think any of this is breaking the mold massively, by the way, but very much about listening, and just absorbing and documenting, and then reflecting and coming up with a series of solutions, whether that be in immediate, short, medium, or long term. And I think that's sort of always quite a nice thing, because it's not, the kind of pre-sales stuff is obviously not chargeable, but it also means that we can quite often give a recommendation, or we can give a series of recommendations that CIO or C-suite person might just say, you know what, I'm going to keep that, but I'm going to put it on ice. And then generally what happens is they do come back to us, right? And they'll come back to us 3, 6, 9, 12 months later, when they've got the money, or the budgets have been approved, or actually that red thing has now turned into complete shambles, and they're desperate. So that's kind of the process. We tend to we're promoting a little bit more on the website now, but absolutely, if anybody out there wants SmartCo to engage with them, either come to me or through anyone through LinkedIn, just message us directly, or through the kind of contact stuff on the website, and we'll be very responsive to that, of course. But yeah, so it's generally kind of quite a nice humanistic approach rather than a hard sell.
And that's so critical. It's very similar to our business model. It's, if you lead forward, we always say if you're going with the value forward approach and you ask what's in it for them, not what's in it for you, that you'll never have to worry about where your business growth is going to come from. It sounds so simplistic, but it's
all about relationships, right? And like I say, we're in these massive organizations, and we're always up against the big four. We're always up against the offshore businesses, the global SIs, the GSIs, and actually we win quite a lot of work sort of off them, just purely because we're not, we're probably sort of better priced, and I don't mean that we're cheap, but we're more sensible with our pricing. We're independent and pretty unbiased, so we don't come with we're not trying to sell licenses. We're not trying to do managed service like us. So we're not wedded to Microsoft or Azure or Oracle or SAP or anyone. We're genuinely truly independent and unbiased, and we're very, very client focused. We're very much about what the client wants and needs, and we're not interested in selling peripheral items, because that's not what we're here to do. That's not what we're good at, right? We're here to just deliver on behalf of our clients. So yeah, for us it's a relationship. It's an absolute relationship game.
Yeah, and I like to say it's the value proposition that matters, right? So you get into the cost and whatnot, and we kind of say something similar, but it's like we deliver such an unbelievable value proposition that it's like almost like it becomes a price.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Right. What do you love most about what you do, whether it's in IT or working with clients? Again, that's a conversation I always like to have with people, right? Because it's like we look at ourselves as business, executives, and whether it's in your business life with IT or your personal life. But what is it that you love most about what you do?
It's a really good question. It's very different to what I used to do. So I used to run these huge programs, and it was. There's a lot of pressure when you're a program director and you're on a £30 million budget, and everyone's looking at you all the time as what's your plan doing, what's your scope doing, what's your quality doing, what's your budget. So it's a very different role. I love the sort of entrepreneurship of SmartCo and working within SmartCo. We have a very flat structure, so it's not very hierarchical. So anyone in the business can pretty much do anything they want to do to a certain extent, as long as it's kind of within the guide rails of a process. But being around like really good people and people who are all ambitious but nice with it, like they're not, there's not a lot of aggro. It's probably the wrong word. You know what I mean? There's not like tension between people. And I really enjoy that. I really enjoy the freedom of that. So, my weeks really vary. I'll spend a full day in a workshop. I take last week. I was a full day in a workshop in Leeds on the Monday, which is in the north of England. Had a really good day, really hospitable client. Really wanted us to be there. Saw us as a real value add. It was just lovely, because we weren't knocking on the door as a few people in suits going, yeah, we're going to audit your systems. It was like, we're here to help you.
You're a partner. You're looked at as a partner.
100%, and a really sort of like that kind of critical friend thing, right? And that kind of radical candor that you can have sometimes with those clients is great, because we're just honest and open. We're not bullish about it. We're sensitive about it, but we're also, we're objective, right? We're independent and objective. So if we see something that's wrong, we say it's wrong. Like you've got no strategy, or you've got no target operating model, or you've got no, governance procedures around data, or like code to live. Like you need to fix it. So I really like that. I really also like the opportunities like it gives me. So it means I get to travel. I was over in Copenhagen seeing one of our clients a couple of weeks ago with one of the other partners at SmartCo. That was a great trip, and it's borne beared fruit. We've managed to win some work out the back of that. I like the variety in the people. We have the whole healthcare side of the business, which I'm involved in to a less extent, but we work with 50 odd NHS trusts. So we're doing some really good stuff with digital wards and sort of progressing the digital healthcare agenda in the UK. So that makes you kind of proud, right? My wife's a nurse, so that's like, okay, we're doing something good for not just for the commercial side of the world, but we're also helping the social side of the world. And it's just a generally really good place to work. In terms of my personal life, I mean, between juggling this, 2 kids, and all the stuff that comes along, like with a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old in London, it's a busy life. It's hectic, and I enjoy it though. I kind of thrive on it. I sometimes think I've probably got some sort of high functioning anxiety if you had to put it into a box. But it does mean that when I go to bed, it's like I'm gone because I'm working hard. But we're all within SmartCo. We're all kind of geared up to a certain extent the same way, and we have a nice balance, healthy balance of people that just bring us down sometimes and just guys, it's not all about that. Like, let's go and have some fun sometimes as well. So, yeah, big into soccer, football, local football teams.
And you have to specify. You mean football is in soccer, right?
I'm sorry, I had to say that.
Which is good. That's my sons. Both of my sons play football, soccer. Yes, one plays at university and the other plays here. And I always joke about it because I through college played American football, so I always have to specify that now. But and I will say looking back, because I have a 19 and 15-year-old, and I know where you've been in terms of the juggling both of the career and the family and the kids, but it goes by fast. So
Well, exactly, and that's the thing, right? And our kind of my boss, Reese, he always says to me and the others, just enjoy it. You got to enjoy it because there's no point in doing it if you're not enjoying it. And so we sometimes have to be reminded of that because it is it can be quite heads down sometimes, but then again, you're in a supportive environment that helps you grow, right?
Well, I love it. I'll tell you what, I've loved our conversation, and I will take you up as long as you're open to come back. I want to hear more about that client that you're implementing the project for AI. And you kind of touched on it earlier as we roll out here. Where are some places that folks can follow you, can learn more about SmartCo? You mentioned LinkedIn. We'll put a link to your profile there. And then the website is for SmartCo is
www.smart-co.co.uk.
Okay, and those are the two best places.
Two best places, yeah, two best places. We've got we're pretty active on LinkedIn. We've got obviously a SmartCo page. We post a lot of stuff. I've recently written a blog, and all of the kind of partnership team. Right, there's a blog comes out every month, so keep an eye out for those. We cover all sorts of things: AI, cyber, healthcare, sort of digital healthcare. So there's that, and then the socials as well. So that we're on all the other socials if you just want to find them.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed our conversation. I am going to take you up on having you back. So hope I hope I didn't scare you away.
No, not at all. It was a lot easier than I thought, actually.
You did great.
Yeah, that was good fun.
All right, Oliver, we'll look forward to talking to you on the next one.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Ta-ra for now.